Hello, we're live here. So welcome, firstly. Good afternoon here, but might be your morning, evening, wherever you are around the world. But welcome to our Devo monthly showcase. This month, we're talking about modernizing your SOC. And today I have Mickey, our very own APAC cybersecurity strategist, ready to go through this showcase. But before we start, firstly, some housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please input them in the Ask a Question panel at any point during the webinar. This is a live webinar, so please put your questions in and we'll answer them live. So don't be afraid to just chuck them in at any point. Secondly, if you see a contact us button, this is for if you have a demo request, if you just want to say hi to us, or if you have something you want to talk to us about, please click on the button and we'll get right back to you after this webinar. And lastly, we will be sending this on demand after the this webinar, so please keep an eye out if you want to rewatch it or send it to, for example, a colleague. And with that out of the way, I'm going to hand it over to Mickey. Thanks.
Richard. So look, over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to cover how organizations are modernizing their approach to SOC operations by pivoting from a reactive model to an autonomous model, augmenting the analysts, not replacing them, with the right tooling and with a cloud-native delivery method, allowing organizations to spend less time on architecture, more time on the security improving activities that demonstrate real value. So first, before I tell you about how to modernize your SOC, I want to just take a step back and talk about the world that we live in today in the SOC. Let me start with the obvious. There's been an explosion of logs in this space for the last 20 years. When we first started the SOC operations, it was mainly network focused, purely network focused almost. And then endpoints started to become a little bit more popular. There was an explosion of endpoint data, and they were getting fed into the SOC analysts. However, this information is not enough. And so over the last 20 years, we have seen an expansion of these new data sources because it hasn't been good enough to just get simply network data or simply endpoint data, because the SOC needs all information to get a complete understanding of attacks going on, but also to measure security posture and for compliance. So things that you need above and beyond, you need the application data, your transactional data, IT, OT, mobility data, and data from your cloud environments, whether it's SaaS, IaaS, or PaaS. And you need all that data coming into the SOC, and that means that the SOC must deal with that explosion of data, which brings pain to the SOC typically. This data explosion, coupled with the attack surface expanding and talent shortage, where it's hard to recruit people with the knowledge, and the people you do recruit spend significant time doing those menial tasks, undervalued tasks. Additionally, regulations have ballooned, budget pressures continue, and sometimes even the SOC value is being questioned, even if everybody knows that the SOC is a priority. The question is, am I really getting value for all this investment I'm putting into my logging analytics, and what is it really doing for me? And this is the SOC pain that we're living in today. And so how is Devo helping modernize the SOC? Well, the Devo Enterprise Logging and Security Analytics platform can typically handle around 10 times the data, at 10 times the speed, and at half the cost, which is compelling, but only if it's headed to a particular destination. And that's why we are on this journey towards the autonomous SOC. We have a vision of the autonomous SOC with the augmented analyst, and I want to make that clear, augmented analyst. This journey involves taking more data and more use cases without breaking the bank, and also always automating. We use machine learning and AI, and I'll talk about how we do that today. And we're helping organizations finding the needle in the haystack and giving them the conclusive evidence that they need to make security decisions. So when we think about the three activities that you need to do in a SOC, there's three general motions, and they start with ingest. And so how do we modernize the ingest? Your SOC analysts don't want to be burdened with your typical processes of onboarding data. For example, having to deploy yet another agent on top of your existing machines, doing an older, or using an older method of collecting telemetry in your environment. That's why our Devo collection tier supports, simple things like direct syslog. We don't go out and say, should you need to replace every single one of your agents or redeploy a new agent, because we think that utilizing your existing investment is a much better way of modernizing your SOC. Organizations have not only alert fatigue, but endpoint fatigue or agent fatigue. And so a Devo strategy is to use your endpoint. And, if you need an edge use case where your infrastructure is not collecting the right information, we add that on. But how we're modernizing the cloud space, modernizing the SOC is we perform a cloud-to-cloud communication with our Devo Cloud Collector. We skip the middle point for connecting your cloud data to the SOC faster. So, for example, when we're collecting AWS data, our Cloud Collector, which is hosted by Devo in Devo's SaaS environment, will pull directly from AWS or CrowdStrike or Azure or GCP or insert any cloud vendor. We go cloud to cloud. That means there's no on-premise footprint and nothing for you to manage. The collection is one piece, and ingestion is one piece. What does the modern SOC need in a data platform once it's sent through? Well, they want to be able to unify 100% of their log data. They want to be able to collect information from any device in their network. And how do they do that? Well, they want to do it by not indexing and having these traditional indexing processes. They don't want to have to think about the data structure immediately or before they send it. They want to send it, make use of it immediately. In addition, organizations don't want to have to go through these, archaic methods of hot, warm, cold, or this data set, I want it 30 days, and this one here, I want 90 days. They need it always hot, because when you're running active investigation, you don't want to have to be waiting an hour, 2 hours for that search to complete, because you don't know which data set is going to be the most important when you're doing an investigation. And so where others might say firewall is low-value data, that might hold the critical piece. So modernizing SOC requires all of your information to be hot and also at 10 times the speed in query performance. Now, when you're adopting a new modern technology and moving to the cloud, delivering a SaaS technology, generally when you're collecting petabytes of data per day, you need to do it efficiently. And so Devo, we have 10 times smaller the footprint in comparison to other technologies, and that's why we can commit to a fraction of the cost of other technologies. And because we don't, do these indexing processes and we store the raw logs, again, that adds to our ability to have a very small footprint in our SaaS delivery. And again, it's cloud native, not cloud hosted, which is different. Cloud native, you are a user, not an administrator. When you're using a cloud hosted log and analytics technology, you have to worry about all these complex activities like data parsing. You have to worry about replication, backups, testing software updates. With a cloud native SaaS delivered service, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And that's what modernizing the SOC is all about. And so when you do modernize ingest, what's the next part? Well, you've got this data in. This is where we need to pivot to insight, getting insight out of your data set and providing a rich array of visualizations is important because different users, different personas have different ways of analyzing your data. For example, the SOC team wants a MITRE attack matrix so they can see what detections they have deployed, what detections they're missing, and maybe what data sources they're missing. The operations team, IT operations team, might want to see metrics across a variety of hosts. The SOC might want to see an attack story end-to-end through graph visualization. The stories are always changing, so having a rich library of visualizations and an easy way to interact with your data helps you get to the insight part faster. Now, finally, the third part in the modernizing the SOC. So we've had ingest, insight. Now, the insight is not useful without action. So let's talk about action. Taking action and responding to threats in an automated way ensures your SOC's performance increases, even in the face of the ever-increasing amount of threats. Devo's innovative SOAR capabilities, such as the AI bot Audra that helps you build no-code playbooks without requiring specialty expertise. Our patented solutions include highly accurate decision automation technology that allows your security team to rely on its decisions with less analyst intervention required. It also can be seamlessly integrated into your environment from day one with hundreds of integrations included. And so this means that you can hit the ground running, modernize your SOC, purely cloud native. And this is the modern way of running your SOC. No longer are you having to run things on premise. You're becoming the user and not the administrator. And so with that, I'm going to flip over to the demonstration. And so in my demo, what I will go through today is a quick overview of Devo and how you can do no-code searching and also no-code analytics. We're then going to go through a bit of a threat hunt, and then we're going to pivot to the action part. So we're going to go from, we've already ingested our data, we're going to go insight to action. Now, whenever you're in the SOC, you want to get an understanding, the lay of the land. How's my data? How's the health of my ingest? Because that data is coming in. You know, what are the last 5 unread alerts that I might need to investigate? What's the event volume that's coming in? And you'll see here a differentiator with Devo. And I won't spend too much time on here, but suffice to say, with Devo, we provide an average ingest over a 30-day period, not an ingest per day model. So it's an average ingest over a 30-day period, which is a much more fair model. But when you send data to Devo, how do we make it usable? How do we add that insight? We've got this unique technology called tagging. This tagging is all that you need to do as an analyst. You can see your top 10 sources. And so let's see what other sources I have. This tagging system, what might I add, is like a data dictionary for your entire environment. And why I wanted to bring you to this query location is that generally when you're starting off as a junior analyst or a SIM analyst, or the first time you've used a SIM technology, you don't want to be presented with an empty box to say and be told by your manager, go and find threats. It's hard because you know, well, what type of data do I have access to? How is that meaningful? What fields do I have available? How do I interrogate this data? All of these questions are generally asked by even the most senior of SOC analysts. And so Devo, our tagging system, breaks up your data into logical segments. We have the technology. So for example, if I want to look at my cloud data, I don't have to know what I want to look for. I can just type in cloud, select the item, and then we break it up to brand, type, and subtype. So I've got myself AWS here. I've got my CloudTrail data, and then I've got all the information there. And if I want to see, well, for EC2, what fields can I interrogate? I can go in here, select the fields that are useful for me, and continue my investigation. I might just want to get, the source IP address, for example. But we're taking the guesswork out of the SOC. Every time an analyst has to take a guess, they're adding to their cognitive load, how much they have to process. And in our no-code analytics and our method for modernizing the SOC towards the autonomous SOC, we're taking away those decision points. So let's jump into that threat hunt, where we're going to leverage our firewall data, and we're going to do some no-code analytics, and then finally enrich it with some known threat intelligence. So for me, this data that I'm interested in, I want to look at whenever a host on-premise connects to a cloud service to a known threat list. So let's do that. So I'm going to click on Firewall, All Traffic. And what this is doing here, and I'll pause for a bit, is in terms of modernizing the SOC, they want to be able to write a query once and for it to apply against many data sources. So Devo's union tables normalize data across different data sets into one view. We have many of these just to make it easy for detection creation. So firewalls, all of your file data, plus other network data is in one table for you to interrogate. So you don't need to go, grab information from here, there, and everywhere. So it's very normalized and makes it very easy to interact. With a click of a button, I'm going to pivot into the Devo search. What you just saw there was the lightning fast, hot aspect of the Devo search platform. It's really efficient to go from that ingest, insight, action, because we're not punishing you for the pivot. That hot data means data is presented in a really efficient manner. And so what you're seeing here is a virtual view of your data. I haven't had to install a parser because the tagging system does that for me. That parsing, that is a global parser, means that as new technologies are known to Devo, we've already updated our parsers for all of our customers. So never have to worry about a parser or regex again. So here is my toolbar here and my canvas, my location to play. If I wanted to, I can switch between views. Depending on the analyst view, might want to do a list-based view, or I might want to do the event view. Having the necessary tools to modernize a SOC and modernize SOC operation is important because every analyst works differently. Now, no-code search might get me to this point where I can, maybe filter, and I'm using the keyboard to provide a filter. I might want to filter 195, this IP address. And that's no-code searching. Let me show you no-code analytics in the story of looking at a source IP connecting to a public IP. So a private IP connected to a private IP connected to a public IP, sorry. So this source IP, I have to, as an analyst, in the general, we'll call them legacy SOC we want to know, well, what is the IP addresses for my subnets? And then generally going through and going, what are my SOCs? What are my my IPs in my on-premise environment? It's a very hard thing to remember. So Devo is reducing the cognitive load for the analyst by using that toolbar. I just press the filter button, and I'm just going to say, here's a private IPv4 address, and filter it. And just like that, refreshed, and you're ready to go. Not punishing the analyst for pivoting. Now, let's do that same operation. I'm going to select the column that I want to work with. I'm going to press the filter operation up the top to filter my field, and I'm going to say public address. Nice and simple. And again, we haven't had to rerun a complete search. We're just being very efficient with how we query. And so now what I do want to do is I want to do some analytics. I want to maybe get some account between these hosts. So let's do that. What I'm going to do first is use the keyboard and select the fields that I want, and I'm going to group them. So group, and then I'm going to perform an aggregation function. So I'm just going to say, and using the toolbar at the top, just give me a general count. And what you'll notice down the bottom is as I'm writing these queries, the query editor is building them out for me, so I can see what I'm doing down the bottom. And if you wanted to, let's say you're a bit brave and you wanted to use Devo's query editor, even though you don't need to, you can, by all means, make modification. You can say select, and what you'll notice is that when I type, it's doing predictive text. It knows all the operations, and I can press Control Spacebar, and it says, here's all the operations that you could run here in this search. For now, I'm going to avoid that, and I'm going to do my original activity, which is enriching the destination IP with a known threat. And again, what we're doing here, we're just adding columns. We're enriching our data set. So what I'm going to call this is Cyber Threat Intel. I'm going to enrich it with a lookup. So this is a threat data CSV file. It allows us to spit out the categories for an IP address. And so I'll go field. And what this will do is it's going to do two things. It's going to say, show us anytime there is a null match or a match with a string match. And so what we can do is we can say, show me anytime the match is not null. So we won't be getting a validated threat. And so we've just run this search, and it's going to go through and mine it. And now we've got ourselves a small set of data to work with. And if I look at my query, I might want to say, well, from here, I notice we've got a question, so I might just do the question at the end. So with this query, we might want to say, well, now we want to pivot to the action phase. And so with that, let me pivot to Devo SOC. So Devo SOC is another cloud-native technology that natively integrates into the Devo platform. It's a no-code automation technology with over 200 integrations to make it super simple for you to go from an idea to an action. Let's pivot to the playbook session and have an understanding of what we can do with the platform. Now, I'm only going to show you a brief view of what we're able to do with the Devo SOC platform. So I've got myself a set of playbooks. I've got myself Modernize the SOC. One I've built for today. So let's take a look at that playbook. As you can see, it's a very visual method of modifying and running a playbook. I've got my query. So the query that I've run within Devo, I've copied it, and now I'm running that within the playbook. So I'm getting the results from that query, and now I'm going to the action phase. I want to do something with that. And this is where Devo SOC is not just a coding-based SOC. It's an analytics engine. And so our secret sauce is Spark, I guess a data processor that not only can do the typical data processing functions, but also can bring in capabilities like machine learning, not the pretend statistical machine learning, real models that are industry known and industry recognized. This playbook, what I'm going to show you, is just a simple response automation playbook, not a decision automation playbook, which is a separate story for another time. So I am pulling this in. And what I'm doing is I'm going, for each of these results, I want to aggregate these indicators. This is where the statistical capabilities come in. I can do things with the SOC like sum, the first row, the max, so max of the numbers. I can run these through. So I've got here distinct sources. I've got 22 connections to this destination IP address. I've got the known threat, so I know it's a C2 slingshot APT. And now what I might want to do is I might want to hunt in Devo. I might want to hunt across all of my data sets and get the results. So hunting across different data sets. And what you'll notice here is a little different icon. This is what we call a module. A module within our playbook is like a minified playbook in a sense. So we can, rather than having to repeat the same code over and over, we've encapsulated common functions into a mini playbook. And so here we're saying hunt in Devo, and let's split the results. We want to actually split it so we've got an array of results, and just filter out the source address because we want to quarantine that host. And as I'm clicking through this, I'm doing the live response capabilities. I'm actually extracting the fields. So I got source address here. And again, connecting to my on-premise EDR, I'm able to quarantine these hosts using that module. So I'm dynamically feeding in variables to these modules without having to write a single line of code. And so on the source side, I've done the quarantine. Now I want to block the destination on the firewall. And again, we're doing the same thing. We're extracting that destination IP and we're going out to our firewalls and blocking it with our block node module. And so as you can see, we went really simply from insight to action between Devo and Devo SOAR. And I haven't had to write a single line of code, even though I could have. And I've used this no-code analytics and no-code SOAR to get me to the action component. Now, with 3 minutes left, I'm going to stop my presentation, stop my demo, and pivot over to the final slide. And with Devo, it's everything you've been missing. And so I'll pause here. We provide the autonomous SOC suite. And so we've only covered the SOAR today, but we do have an autonomous hunting capability. We've got the MITRE ATT&CK Advisor that allows us to understand what data source we may be missing in the environment. And it's everything that you've been missing in the SOC. Easy ingest, streaming platform, analytics at your fingertips, IT and security as well, all the way up to respond and action. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this webinar. We like to keep them very efficient and on time. And so what I will do is jump to the questions, if I may. So I'll start with one here. Apologize, I'm just going to jump in. So the question was, do you have a customer really ingesting petabytes of data per day? And it's a great question. And so collectively across our customers, so our environment, it's not a typical PaaS deployment where you've got one customer, each customer is discrete. Collectively, we are doing petabytes of data because it's a SaaS platform across multiple regions, so US, EMEA, and APAC. So petabytes of data is realistic across our customer base. Another question, it goes from a total cost perspective, where do your customers allocate most of its budget when implementing Devo, e.g. directly to Devo, AWS for moving data out, etc.? If I understand the question correctly, the moving data out of any cloud environment, regardless of the cost, or regardless of the location, is generally a pretty, I'd say, affordable, pretty affordable in comparison to the generic or the general SIEM. So there is an allocation of the budget for the data analytics technology, but we run in AWS Sydney, and so from AWS to AWS, it's generally not that big of an issue with our customers. And so to date, I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, we haven't generally had any issues where customers are worried about costs with Devo. We have a very fair model when it comes to providing our service to customers, and that's because of our cloud-native architecture and how we have a very small and light footprint in the cloud. And so it can be very efficient with delivering our service, and then you as the customer get the benefit. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. Right, so if you have any other questions that I might have missed, feel free to ask them. If not, I'll pause for now and have a great day, and we shall speak to you soon.
Cool. Thanks for that, Mickey. Some great questions, and what a great demo. If you want to reach out to us or anything, please click on the Contact Us request button on the panel. Otherwise, as Mickey said, have a great day. We'll send this on demand after this webinar as well. So if you want to rewatch it, then you have that MP4. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.